complementary organizations. Map Time, as you heard from Lizzie, is all about like encouraging people to come out and helping them and building awesome maps. It's really educationally oriented. Yeah. Okay. If you have any questions about MappingDC, feel free to talk to Brandon over here. He's our local representative. MappingDC has been around a bit longer, maybe 5 or 6 years. Started with Kate Filbert, Kate Chapman, yeah. Andrew Turner, Serge, yeah, people like that. And our mission was to work on OpenStreetMap in the DC area. We just focus on the DC area, and we're trying to improve the map ranking. Recently, one of our achievements has been to get all of the DC buildings from the DC government imported into OpenStreetMap. So I was invited to talk today a little bit about street mapping because we do a fair bit of that. Every other month we go out on the streets in a different part of DC and we bring papers and we take notes, and then we reconvene at a restaurant or a library or Starbucks or something. And we will open up our laptops and get our notes and our edits into the map. And so we've done those over the years dozens of times. Has anybody done street mapping? Never. No. It's funny. There's a GeoFabric map that maps people, that color codes the map based on who made the change. And if you look, it's Katie Filbert over here, who's made most of the changes in DC. It's like all of Northwest is DC.
So it's all outdated. So we need help.
We need a lot of help.
Yeah.
That's true. This sort of street mapping is complementary towards the aerial mapping that you do with like the humanitarian OpenStreetMap tasks. Because they'll give you digital imagery, and you're there tracing. Like, this is a building, this is a road, this is a path. And that's good. And you saw from Lizzie's animated GIF that it makes a profound difference. And I feel like that's step one. Because step two would be for people to walk up and down the streets, knowing that there's boxes to the left and right of them, and identifying what they are. So walking down the street and saying, okay, this box over here that somebody drew, it's a library. This one over here is a restaurant. And then you can tag it further because OpenStreetMap has a vocabulary for this. It's fully documented on their wiki. They're called tags. So you can tag it with name value pairs. Like this is an amenity, that is a restaurant. The cuisine is Italian. Okay? This is a library. This is all sorts of things. It's not just the buildings that you're going to tag. You can tag points like fountains, monuments, plaques, statues. You could tag street parking, although that's kind of insane. What else? I don't know. Parks, anything that you can think of that you can put on the map or people are adding to the map. So just to recap, the real benefit of street mapping is that you get the sideways view and you get to see all the names. So the names of the restaurants, the names of the buildings, the names of the monuments, and you get those attributes into OpenStreetMap. And that's something you really can't do from aerial imagery. So that's how they complement each other. The other nice thing about doing street level mapping and getting that information into OpenStreetMap is it then becomes searchable. Okay? And so now when you go to osm.org and you do a little search, you can search for Red Cross, and you'll get a list of hits. So that's a nice feature. I had a short story to tell. I went to the school, University of Maryland, and they have a good mapping team over there. I don't know who they are, but their maps are awesome. They map every path, and they map every staircase, which is something I'm not sure you could probably get from aerial imagery, to see that there's stairs here. And every place that there's stairs, it's mapped. And what this enables now is wheelchair routing, which is really profound concept. Like not just like I have a map and I know where the stairs are, so as a person in a wheelchair, I'll avoid those. But the routing engines understand stairs, and they won't route you downstairs. Same thing applies to bikes. And so this is something that you really gain from getting on the street, walking up and down streets, and capturing that data. Another thing that you don't get from aerial imagery is layers in a building, or levels, floors. So you can walk around, and what you see in a city especially in a city, is the first floor of a building is a business, like the cleaners, the pizza shop, whatever, and the second floors and above is residential. So I'll show you how you can capture that and how you can get that into the map too. Does anybody have any questions? No? Okay. So my plan for today is just to give this little spiel for like 10 minutes, and then we'll break up into teams, I think 2 teams. We'll just walk around a little bit, or maybe just 1 team.
It's pretty small, but maybe 2.
2 small. And I'll point out some of the features that you would want to capture as you're walking up and down the street. And it's a beautiful day, so let's get outside. I figure we'll be on the street for about an hour. I want to point out, it's more important for me to point out some of the things that you don't see from aerial imagery than it is for us to actually capture everything, okay? With MappingDC, we want to walk up and down the streets and capture everything. But this is more of an educational exercise. Let's see, I'll talk about tools in just a minute. And then we'll come back and I'll show you how to take your notes, or my notes, and we'll get them how to use the editor. Now, quick question, how many people have actually edited OpenStreetMap? I think everybody. Okay, almost everybody, that's great. What editors do you prefer to use? At ID. I think the majority of people are using ID. Johnson, I know you might. Those are keys. So there's two basic editors out there now. One is ID, and it's embedded right into the OSM website. So it's a JavaScript-based editor written by the great folks at Mapbox. In fact, Aaron is here. Aaron has done some work on it. That's a great editor, easy to learn, simple. And then there's JAWSM, which is like the 30-ton elephant. It's Java, it's a native app, it's free and open source, of course, but it's a much richer experience. It has this capability for plugins, and there's about 100 plugins that you can do. So for example, what's a plugin? If you were mapping apartment buildings, you could just draw one big square for an apartment building. But with a plugin called Terracer, you could just say, that apartment building is really 8 buildings, and it'll automatically put in all the dividers and make each building a separate building. So it does things like that, which you don't get with the ID editor. On the other hand, the ID editor really prompts you very well for good information. So once you say this is a building, it'll say, well, what type of building? It'll say, oh, it's a restaurant. Okay, what's the cuisine? What does it serve? What are the hours that they're open? Who's the owner? And so they're called presets, and it's really great with presets. You could use both editors. You don't have to pick one. So let's talk about tools. I have my GPS, which these days is not as useful, given that the aerial imagery is done already in many areas, and all we know about all the streets. So this really comes in handy when you're out in the mountains, when there's no cellular reception. Because the cell phone, although it has GPS, it's using your cellular provider to help you out with the calculations. So this is going to grab your GPS sensor readings from the, and then upload them to T-Mobile, Verizon, or Sprint. They're going to do the number crunching, which is a big battery drain. Okay, and then they'll just send you back the results with your latitude and longitude. So that's the thing. I think there's apps that will postpone or delay the calculations so you can get them later. I don't know. That's why this guy is so big and bulky. It's because it's doing the calculations right here on it, and it's got a big battery. But these are useful when you're out in the mountains, when you're doing trails that have not been mapped at all. Also, they work well when there's a lot of cloud cover or tree cover in the aerial imagery. Okay, so if you're out on a hike, you just turn it on, clip it to you, and then it'll capture your trace. And then from that, you upload your trace into OpenStreetMap, and then you can trace on top of it. What else? The other thing is when you're using these, or when you're using your cell phone with the apps, you're going to be capturing waypoints. So you're going to be walking around and say, here's a monument. And you just capture a waypoint, it'll give you a number, a sequential number, like 23, 24, 25. And then you take notes on your paper. This waypoint number 23 is a monument for John Paul Jones. And then when you get back to a nice quiet place, you can sit down, open your laptop, and get that information into the OpenStreetMap. Any other questions? Well, any questions at all? Okay.
What's the principle of cameras which have GPSs? Like how do they?
That's a great question. Cameras with GPS. I don't know much about that. But I could maybe give you a reference. There's a great project called Mapillary. Now, Mapillary is, I think they're their own company. But the idea with Mapillary is you would download the Mapillary app and then bring up your phone and you would walk down the street. And it's taking a picture every second. It's basically Google Street View. It's the open source version of Google Street View. It is a private company, but they're making all of their data freely available. So as you're walking down the street, you could just capture all this information. And then you can come back and sit down and replay it. And then you could like, as it's playing back, you can get that information into OpenStreetMap, like all the restaurants that you passed. So it's got win-win. But I think your question was more about like pure cameras that have GPS capability. Right.
That's probably
Do you think most cameras nowadays have
Probably.
like the good ones? Yeah.
Like an SLR, but most of those don't have GPS.
Yeah. So they'll capture, that's actually good information. So let's say you come to a plaque for like the World War II Memorial. But did anybody pass the World War II Memorial today? There's like a couple hundred people out there, old people. It must be a reunion of sort. Well, yeah. I don't know what's going on. Taking pictures while you're out on the street is a great asset for you to get the information back into OpenStreetMap. However, the images do not. The images that you take stay with you. There's no OpenStreetMap repository really for that, aside from these private companies. There's another private company that does it too, Tukolowski. He has another company for that.
I was just going to ask about how, if you guys use or could be using OpenMapKit. I didn't know very much at all about it.
I'm just learning about it myself.
Okay, because I would assume that that would then cut down your time of kind of having, or errors potentially, in seeing the thing, having to write it down and come home and or wherever and have to actually translate that onto the computer. If you could be doing it while you're there and
that's true. Okay, and let me segue into some of the tools. There are a couple tools like Pushpin for iOS, and I'm guessing this is like OpenMapKit. Pushpin is an app that gets your GPS coordinates. You're right in front of the object, and you can say drop a pin right here, so Pushpin. And then you can tag it right there, save it, and it's right there in OpenStreetMap. I think that's the same concept as OpenMapKit.
Not exactly.
Okay, tell me more.
OpenMapKit requires like more preparation in advance. Like you download like from Overpass like some like features or things, and then you load them ahead of time, and then it, like when you're done, I think you get like the change set thing that you can load into JASM or whatever, and then upload it.
So yeah.
So essentially build a task manager ahead of time, and then or build a task ahead of time, and with all the options, and then you go out and you.
This sounds fabulous.
While you're out there, and I think they were saying that you could like take a picture and then put it in also.
So when I heard about OpenMapKit, it was when I learned about it was at the My Developer Summit. It was another summit around here, a couple of buildings away, with the Department of Interior, and they're interested in trails. So what they have is a program called what is it called? Trail
Assist?
Trail what?
Trail Assist?
Not Trail Assist. But anyway, traileditor.org. And you would go to a trailhead. I gotta ask about that later. So you would go to a trailhead, you take the picture, and then take some notes and email it to a certain email address. And then it pops up on a website, and then it makes its way into OpenStreetMap.
Trailhead.
Trailhead, yeah. At that conference, we also came up with a new tag, Trailhead, because we realized that there was no trailhead. friend right here came up with the idea. So that right now is out for comment. And that's what I wanted to mention about the tags. The tags are, new tags come and go, I think, and they're open for discussion. And so we just created this trail.
But it's just a bureaucracy, so just do it and then like.
It's not a democracy.
It's
Duocracy.
bureaucracy.
It's a
So
duocracy.
you just like
Do
do
it.
it and then like you can like document
Do
another
it,
wiki.
and then resolve conflicts later.
Yeah.
Right, I mean, there are no rules about what, you know, tags you apply to certain features, but, you know, there's a community and there are sort of accepted practices, and you know, you want to try to not to stray too far from what's
Conventional.
sort of
Yeah.
been agreed upon.
Yeah.
Or you do something strange and then it's not going to get rendered.
Have you heard of the term folksonomy? Would you say it's a folksonomy? So what I've heard about folksonomy is that, you know, OpenStreetMap has their own vocabulary of tags. They're pretty well documented and they can change. But a folksonomy is more like you just come up with things as you go. Like, I want to create my own tag with the name value pair. Let's say parking is parking good, parking bad. Or let's say my parking good, my parking bad. And so you could do your own thing and start editing. I don't know how that, let's not talk about that. I think it might be possible. All right, so.
Could you talk about paper maps a little bit?
Yeah, great idea, thank you.
Thanks.
So there's this project called Fieldpapers, fieldpapers.org, created by Stamen. It's actually a fork of an earlier project called
Walking papers.
Thank you, Walking Papers. Same idea. So you go to the website and you say, I'd like to build a map for the DC area, and you zoom in, you zoom in, you zoom in. You say, I want it to be 2 pages wide by 2 pages tall, and actually I'm working this, I think 3 by 3. And so you print them out. This one's a cover sheet, and then you get them like this. So what you can do is as you walk, so maybe you don't have a GPS, right? What you're doing is, as you're walking up and down the streets, you can just mark it right here. You can mark it right on the paper. You can put a number, and then in a separate yellow paper, you could just take notes, and you could just do drop notes.
What's the name of that website again?
Fieldpapers. Now, the other neat thing about this, as you can see, they have a QR code. So what you can do is take a picture. You can scan it or take a picture of it. And the QR code results to a URL, and you can upload this to fieldpapers.org. And then it'll become a layer in your editor. So all of your notes, all of the notes that you took become a layer, and then you can just trace on top of your own notes in the editor. I actually don't do that too often, because it's just easy enough for me to read my notes. But it's a pretty neat feature.
Can you get field papers in ID?
I think you can, probably.
That's a good question. I'm not sure.
That's
We'll ask
very-
Aaron. Okay. So that's Fieldpapers. Oh, you're all correct, right? Did I miss anything?
So, is there any scale and we need to specify for
The scale?
paper?
That's a good question. You could zoom into whatever scale you need. I tend to like to get maybe 2 city blocks on a row.
Okay.
Because you want enough space to label each building, well, or each store in a building. It depends on where you're doing the mapping.
Okay, thank you.
Or you want to tell them about OSM Tracker?
Great. So Pushpin is a great app for iOS, but for Android, I prefer to use OSM Tracker. And believe me, there's a bunch of them out there. I've tried some, and this one just stuck with me. OSM Tracker. It's free and open source, and it's a quick download. And the idea is, on Android, you just fire it up. In fact, let me just fire it up. Okay, I'm not going to be able to get the next, oh, here's what it does. So when you fire it up, it starts taking coordinates, GPS coordinates as you're walking around. But then you get all these buttons, okay? You get all these buttons like this. So as you're walking around, you can be like, oh, that's a tourism thing. It's a monument. Oh, here, a bench. And then you just tap it on your phone. Now sometimes you come up to something that you don't really know what it is. So this little app's got two things. You can do a voice record, and it'll just record like 10 seconds of your voice. And you can do text notes. And then what's nice about this app is that with a click of a button, you can save it and upload it right into your profile in OpenStreetMap. How many people have OSM profiles or user accounts? That's perfect, it's great. So the idea is under your profile, there's a word for traces. And you click on traces, and this trace appears right there. What's even better is that if you find your trace in OpenStreetMap under your profile, there's a word there, edit. You click on edit, it shows up right there in the ID editor. So the whole pipeline is really built there for you. I'd be curious if somebody wants to explore other applications and give me feedback. I'd like to know how some of the other applications.
I have like Keypad mapper, which is meant for like mapping addresses, but it can be abused for other things. Like you can just like add notes, like I think it has like pictures, or you can record like just speak and record, and then like put it into adjustment or whatever. Like that's probably like the best one.
Yeah.
Or OSM tracker is good also.
Yeah, but it's old. I feel like it's old and it hasn't really been updated.
No, it's
good?
Yeah.
Okay, then it's time for me to upgrade.
Yeah.
For iOS, are there any other ones that you should be aware of?
Just Pushpin.
Okay.
Next one is Pushpin OSM.
Yeah. So yeah, feel free to download these apps now. This is a perfect time as we prep to go outside.
Or you might want to go outside and download them.
What that?
I don't know. I have like 2 bars.
Oh, really?
Like it's like.
Well, there's a free
The
Wi-Fi.
Wi-Fi, yeah.
There's a Wi-Fi over here.
So you recommended OSM tracker for Android?
Yeah.
Right.
Any other apps for Android
Keypad.
that we need today?
Only, you don't need all of them, so but that's one you can choose,
Yeah.
right? And that's good because, I mean, there's no real map that you're looking at, but what you don't really need if you're collecting data, if you just want to sort of mark what you see, it'll collect your coordinates for you.
These maps?
Oh, just pass them.
Nice. By the way, if you ever do use these, there is a coordinate system. Like if you drop your papers and they get all scattered, there is a coordinate system, and they're tagged. So like row A, row B, row C, and then column 1, column 2, column 3. And the cover sheet tells you that too. It's happened. It's a pain in the butt. So go ahead, are you downloading your app? I'll let you download them. So this was my goal for today, and I'm open to suggestion. We will go out, we'll walk up and down a city block. Maybe we'll just walk around the block and come back here. We don't have to cover much. I'm going to point out some of the things that you would not normally see from aerial imagery that you would want to capture and put into OpenStreetMap. And then we'll come back here, and we'll open up our laptops. Did everybody bring our laptops? Yeah? Okay. We have enough. We have enough laptops that we can pair up.